Ah, a scorching body pressed tightly against me, and a dense cluster of kisses landed on my neck. The iron chain on my ankle made a clanging sound with each body impact. Julius Weston pinched my neck, smiling ominously. Karina, are you trying to starve yourself to death and make a scene with me? Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. If you don't eat for a day, I'll let people torture your mother for a day. I want to see if you are tough or if your mother is. Brother. I moved my eyes woodenly and suddenly spoke. Julius Weston's actions abruptly stopped, his voice turning colder. What did you call me, whether in the past or now? For more than 20 years, I have never called Julius brother, because I knew since I was young that I would marry him when I grew up. Why would I call him brother? But today, I wanted to. Brother, I faintly raised the corner of my lips, my eyes becoming more hollow. It's been 7 years, isn't it enough? Starting from the day Julius married me and completely took over the company my father left behind. This revenge called hatred lasted for a full 7 years. At the beginning, I demanded a divorce, offered compensation to him, and tried various suicides. But in the end, I could only give up everything under duress, because Julius Weston held my mother's life in his hands. If I behaved, my mother would have a slightly better life in that dog-like existence in the basement. So, I didn't intend to starve myself. I couldn't eat. Late-stage stomach cancer, it's so painful. Enough? Julius Weston coldly tempted the corner of his lips, pinched my chin, and poured porridge into my mouth. Karina, what you owe me is not enough for this lifetime. Aren't you and your mother afraid I'll abandon you? I promise you, we will never be apart in this lifetime. Are you satisfied, my sister? I was forcibly made to drink half a bowl of porridge by him, but I couldn't help but vomit it out. Julius's face became even uglier. He suddenly flipped me over, pulling my long hair tightly. You don't want to eat, right? Fine, then we'll continue. Forced to kneel on the bed, I let him vindicatively ravage me. I endured the pain of both physical and mental tearing, until the overwhelming bloody smell in my stomach could no longer be suppressed. Fresh blood overflowed from my mouth, splattering on the pure white sheets. Julius Weston's panicked voice sounded in my ears, continuously wiping the fresh blood from the corner of my lips. But the more he wiped, the more blood there was. Karina, what's wrong with you? My body collapsed weakly. I looked up at the dazzling crystal chandelier on the ceiling and smiled in relief. Julius Weston, we are even in this lifetime. Let go of my mother. My head was throbbing, and my body felt heavy as if something was pressing down on me. I furrowed my brows and slowly opened my eyes. In front of me was the familiar yet distant ceiling, which made me pause in disbelief. Am I not dead yet? Where has Julius Weston brought me to? This place doesn't look like a hospital, nor does it resemble the bedroom where he imprisoned me with iron chains for 7 years. Instead, it seems more like the house we once lived in. Sizzle. My pajamas were torn, and a cool sensation spread across my chest. A pair of hands with distinct knuckles covered my chest, causing me to tremble all over, with goosebumps rising on my skin in fear. As my gaze hurriedly shifted downwards, I met a pair of crimson eyes. Julius Weston, who looked noticeably younger, had a dazed look in his eyes, breathing heavily. One scorching kiss after another landed on my chest. It felt like a thunderbolt had split my mind open, making me tremble violently. How could this be so similar to the night when Julius Weston was drugged by my mother? Surveying the room, with its familiar furnishings, I could almost confirm that this was the same night. The only difference was that the last time, due to stomach pain, I had taken the medicine my mother gave me and never regained consciousness. Therefore, I couldn't stop the mistake from happening. But this time, by some stroke of luck, I woke up. Julius, calm down. Look clearly. I'm Karina Weston, your sister. Julius Weston's body suddenly froze. He raised his crimson, bewildered eyes, gazing at me in confusion for a few seconds, with a deep frown on his forehead. However, I clearly underestimated my mother's determination of if at first you don't succeed, try again. She had poured nearly half a bottle of strong alcohol down Julius Weston's throat. Combined with the ingredients in the drink, Julius couldn't hold onto his consciousness for even 3 seconds and was defeated. His palm moved down my waistline, eagerly and haphazardly grabbing the edge of my underwear. Bang! I grabbed the glass bottle filled with wishing stars at the head of the bed and heavily knocked it on Julius Weston's head. The glass shattered, and the hand-folded paper stars in the bottle scattered all over the bed. Julius Weston's body suddenly pressed down on me, and then he softly lost consciousness. I gasped for breath with my head thrown back, closing my eyes as if in a near-death experience. Thank goodness, thank goodness. There was a buzzing sound under the bed. I pushed Julius away, wanting to get up and find the source of the vibration. Unexpectedly, as my body rose halfway, a sudden dizziness swept over my head. The stuff my mom mixed into my stomach medicine finally took effect. I felt like my stomach was turning, and darkness gradually clouded my vision. Before losing consciousness, I remembered what was vibrating. It was Julius Weston's phone. The caller should be Betty Foster, the girl he secretly loved. Oh, Betty is here. Are you here to see Julius? Come on in, Betty. The conversation outside the room seemed like my mom welcoming a guest. I sat up on the bed, holding my throbbing head. Outside, it was already bright daylight. The chaotic footsteps approached my room step by step. Julius, Julius is in Karina's room. What? So early? Why did he go to Karina's room? My consciousness instantly woke up and my heart sank. This is bad. Betty Foster used to be our neighbor. In our building, there are 3 families, the Westons, Fosters, and Shaws. Julius Weston and Betty Foster are both exceptionally smart kids. They used to bicker and compete fiercely since they were young, from high school to college. Although they seemed like enemies, in fact, they secretly admired each other, just never explicitly stating their relationship, because everyone knew my dad adopted Julius to have an early son-in-law. So, Julius Weston and Betty Foster agreed to confess their relationship to my mom on the day of their college graduation. He would repay the kindness of our family's upbringing, but not by offering himself. What he didn't expect was that my mom got him drunk and drugged him, so he never received Betty Foster's call last night. Worried that something happened to him, Betty Foster personally came to look for him the next morning. Then, deliberately led by my mom, she witnessed the surprising scene on the bed. Julius and I lying intimately naked on the bed. Disheartened, Betty accepted a family-arranged marriage and married someone else. Julius, filled with endless regret and hatred, entangled with me for 7 years. A muffled groan suddenly came from beside my leg. Julius Weston, unconscious, moved slightly. Then he frowned, sat up, and reached back to touch his head. His bewildered pupils gradually focused, finally settling on my face. Julius's body suddenly stiffened, his eyes showing a clear tremor. Karina! He pounced over, hands trembling violently, rubbing my face and lips haphazardly, as if wiping something off. His tone was angry, but with a hint of trembling. Who allowed you to cough up blood? Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Without my permission, you can't even die, got it? If you dare to die, I will torture your mom. Make her wish she were dead. Each word was like thunder exploding in my ears. My body froze, and my heart couldn't help but tremble uncontrollably. Julius Weston, have you also been reborn, right? Before I could finish speaking, the door was already being twisted open. The person outside the door seemed about to come in. I panicked and didn't care much, so I flew up and kicked Julius Weston off the bed, then quickly grabbed the blanket and covered my naked body completely. The scattered paper stars on the bed were shaken off, and many fell under the bed. Julius, are you okay? Betty entered the room and was startled to see Julius fallen on the floor. She hurried over to help him up. Julius stared at her as if in a daze. After a while, he shouted in disbelief, Betty? Yeah, Betty Foster nodded, a blush creeping over her face. I called you last night, but you never answered. I was worried about you, so I came to check on you. Julius's pupils suddenly contracted. Then he reacted just like me. He looked around the room in disbelief, clearly trying to digest the fact that he had been reborn. But my mom, who hadn't been reborn, had an even bigger reaction. Seeing that we hadn't slept together, her voice raised a few decibels. What's going on? Why aren't you too? Mom, I hurriedly interrupted her. My brother just brought me stomach medicine, and I accidentally spilled it. Can you make me another cup? And also call the housekeeper to clean up the shards. Oh, what a pity, my star jar also broke. With that, I looked up at Betty, who visibly breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Betty, are you here to see my brother? Yeah, Betty Foster nodded shyly, glancing at Julius. Julius had completely come back to his senses by now. He took a deep breath slowly, looked at her face, his voice low and hoarse. Betty, long time no see. Julius Weston chatted with Betty Foster outside. Before leaving, he insisted on cleaning up the broken glass in my room, including the handmade stars scattered all over the floor. He was meticulous, picking up every single one that had fallen. As he left with the garbage bag, he glanced back deeply at my mom and me, his eyes profound and dark. But in the end, he didn't say anything, slowly closing the door. I didn't pay attention to him either, just lying on the bed like a survivor, taking a long breath. Thank goodness, nothing has happened yet. Karina, my mom, pale-faced, sat beside my bed, looking desperate. Don't you like Julius? Why didn't you keep him then? My eyes couldn't help but tremble slightly. Familiar pain surfaced in my heart. But more than that, there was resignation. But he doesn't like me. These things can't be forced. We can't be too calculating, can we? My mom burst into tears, covering her face, sobbing in despair. What if Julius really marries Betty Foster, and then he ignores us? What do we do? What about your dad's company then? I knew in my heart. My mom was not only afraid that the carefully cultivated Julius Weston would become someone else's son-in-law, she was more afraid of not being able to keep the company my dad had worked hard to build. After all, I didn't have a talent for business. I learned to play the piano since I was young. Julius Weston was the successor my dad had cultivated, but if he doesn't marry me, he will always be an outsider. If he takes over the company and turns against us, setting traps for us, it's more reassuring to have the added security of a son-in-law. But Mom, I sat up wrapped in the blanket, hugging my mom. If you plot against my brother like this, aren't you afraid that he will hate you because of it? If he marries me, takes over our family business, and traps us at home in revenge, what do we do? By then, we won't even have the means to resist, let alone rely on others. So, the only one you can trust is me. My mom's sobbing stopped abruptly. She stared at me for a long time, then finally said, Karina, Mom will definitely find you a good husband. Find a good son-in-law son-in-law who can take over your dad's company. That's not what I meant, Mom. Is there a possibility? There is no need for her to find a son-in-law. I have a way to solve this problem. Julius Weston didn't come back until 10:30 in the evening. However, Betty Foster updated her moments after 8 o'clock with a picture of Julius's profile. The caption read, "You deserve my courage." I silently liked the post and left a sincere comment, "Wishing you a lifetime of happiness." Shortly after, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was cold and magnetic, yet straight to the point. "Come out. I'm at your doorstep." I pursed my lips, feeling a bit inexplicably emotional, and softly responded with an okay. As I picked up my coat from the bed to put on, my mom suddenly seemed to perk up. "Karina, is it Kevin Shaw?" "Yes." I nodded, my hand pausing on the doorknob for a few seconds. Kevin Shaw, the young master of the Shaw family, my childhood sweetheart. In the previous life, he married Betty Foster, but he was targeted by Julius Weston out of jealousy, ending up in a situation where both parties were hurt. My mom, however, seemed completely oblivious to my uneasiness and instead became enthusiastic. "I think Kevin Shaw is quite good, knows you inside out, and his family background is suitable. Our families are a perfect match." Click. The door suddenly opened from the outside, gently bumping into me. Julius Weston followed, entering with the early autumn chill clinging to him. In his hands were 2 packed portions of stir-fried noodles from our favorite restaurant. He glanced at the coat on me, his voice cold. "Where are you going so late?" I paused, unconsciously tightening my fingers. In the previous life, Betty Foster and Kevin Shaw had long faded from my world. I didn't know if they were happy after marriage. All I knew was that since then, Julius Weston had always disliked Kevin Shaw. Every time he met him, Julius was in a bad mood, and then he would come home and bother me in silence. Just going out for a walk. I pursed my lips, not mentioning who I was going to meet. Just silently bypassing Julius, I opened the door and went out. "Mom." Julius changed his shoes and entered the house, placing the noodles on the table, looking calm. "I brought you some supper." My mom's eyes trembled, slightly moist. "Julius, last night. It was all my fault. I was afraid that you will abandon us." "Mom." Julius smiled, cutting her off. "I understand. Please also believe me. I have always remembered the kindness of you and Karina for adopting me. No matter who I end up marrying, I will never abandon you and Karina. Let bygones be bygones." My mom choked up, nodding repeatedly. Just as she was about to speak, Julius casually asked, while unpacking a pair of disposable chopsticks, "Is it safe for Karina to go out alone so late?" "Don't worry," my mom smiled. "She's going to meet Kevin Shaw. With Kevin around, she'll be fine." "Julius, what do you think is the likelihood of Karina and Kevin getting together?" "I think they look quite compatible." Snap. Julius broke the disposable chopsticks in his hand into 2 pieces. Under the dim yellow streetlight, a silver car quietly parked by the roadside. Low-key, steady, just like the person driving the car. The window of the driver's seat rolled halfway down, revealing a cold and handsome profile. Seeing me coming out, he casually tilted his head towards the passenger seat. "Get in." I pursed my lips, lowered my gaze, and opened the car door to sit inside. My tense body inexplicably relaxed, and I let out a gentle sigh. "Do you want to watch the sunrise?" Kevin's deep and magnetic voice resonated in the car. I hesitated, shook my head. "No." Kevin glanced at me. "Then how about finding a place to drink? You can let it out and have a good cry." I shook my head and sighed. "No need, really. I'm not that upset." I didn't deny that I was still upset, but I was also happy. Kevin looked at me with surprise, obviously not believing me. "You'd better be." I also knew he didn't believe me. After all, he knew how much I liked Julius Weston. He knew how eagerly I had been waiting to marry him. "Kevin, although this may come as a surprise, I really don't like him anymore. He's with Betty now, and I'm happy about it." Kevin's hand on the steering wheel suddenly tightened. His eyes dark and deep. He looked at me for a long time. Then he suddenly changed the subject. "Have you opened the jar of stars I gave you the day before yesterday?"